Number 1. The Burial. I remember this story very well, despite the fact that it happened a very long time ago. I think it might be a little more weird than it is scary though. It happened in the very first summer after I moved out of my parents' house. I got myself what I guess could be called a nice little studio apartment, with an emphasis on the little part. It was tiny, and no bigger than a really small bedroom, but I didn't care. It gave me my own space, and that was what was important to me. I had a small little futon bed on the floor, which I spent all of my time either laying or sitting on. The room was full of boxes, with some of my stuff displayed around the room, and some of it not. There wasn't much room to move around though, but I really didn't care. I had a path that would get me from my mattress to the door, and that was all that mattered to me. One thing I liked about the building, it had a lot of really nice trees and foliage surrounding it. It was nice to sometimes sit there at the open window and watch the trees blow in the wind while I ate, listen to music, or watch television. Only thing I didn't like about the place was that there was no air conditioning. So after a couple months of living there, summer hit, and this turned out to be a really hot summer. I wasn't used to not having AC, because growing up, my parents always had it. So when I was without it for the first time, it hit me like I wouldn't have thought possible. I didn't realize how difficult it would be to sleep in the heat. I had a small little fan that I would have sitting on the floor, blowing directly in my face. But that was the extent of what I had to cool off. The heat is important in this story because it really messed up my sleeping schedule. I worked a part-time job in some afternoons, but mainly I was home for the most part. And although normally I would sleep through the night, many times I found myself waking up at all hours. One night I woke up because it was so hot, and the fan really wasn't helping me out that much. I was covered in sweat. Looking over at the clock, I saw it was 2 a.m. I groaned because it had only been a couple of hours since I had been asleep, and with the way the heat was feeling, it seemed like I would not be getting back to sleep anytime soon. So I sat up and took a look out the window. My window looked out over the back parking lot. For the longest time, nothing happened. There were no cars pulling in and out, no people walking in or out of the building. It was just the normal dead middle of the night. And then, at about 3:15 a.m., I saw something. It was a large man, and he was carrying something in a trash bag. He also had a shovel. He went behind the parking lot, where there were a lot of pine trees, and he disappeared for a while. When he emerged, he didn't have the trash bag with him anymore, but he still had the shovel. I think anyone in my position would have been awfully curious as to what had just happened. A person burying anything in the middle of the night can be really interesting. However, as far as I knew, the guy's pet died and he was giving it a proper burial. But I wondered, why was he being so secretive about it? Perhaps he was a thief and was burying stolen goods that might be worth a lot of money. Close to 4 a.m., I realized if I wanted to know what the man had buried, I didn't have much cover of night left. So I grabbed a small shovel I had and went out back to find the hole he had dug. It wasn't hard to do, and when I found it I began digging. Yeah, I know this sounds a little weird and intrusive, but I was just so very curious. What was so important for this man to bury under cover of darkness? I dug until the small shovel was able to uncover enough of the bag that I could grab it and pull it out. When I ripped the bag open, I immediately wished I hadn't. It was a hoodoo doll, or something of that sort. It was a scary looking thing, and it had pins all over its body. There were pins in his eyes, pins in his heart, and pins in all of its joints. It had the name Chrissy sewn into it. I definitely don't believe in magic or stuff like that, but it was still creepy. I wish I would have gotten a picture of the doll, but I was too disturbed by it to do anything other than rebury it. Okay, I'll be honest. I removed all the pins first. Even if you don't believe in something, I guess it's better to be safe than sorry. I saw the guy a few times in the hallway, and I realized he lived on my floor. I always felt like he was giving me a weird look, but I could have just been making it up in my head. Every time I saw the man, he gave me the creeps. Number 2. Summer vacation. Let me just say, first, that I was a big summer vacation guy back when I was in school. I'm sure everyone is to a degree. It wasn't because I hated school so much, because I didn't. But I was one of the barefoot, run around the place, playing baseball and exploring kind of guys. Summer vacation just gave me more time to do all of this. I was unlikely to spend even a day indoors during the time off. Anyway, I want to let you know that I am aware that I received some of the blame for what happens in this story. I was being an obnoxious little jerk, but I don't think what I went through truly is justifiable for what I did. When I was 12, I found myself staying up very late on summer vacation. Then I'd sleep until the afternoon. This has actually continued into my adult life, when I work a late second shift. But here, I was doing it so I could hang out with my friends long after the sun went down. Like many neighborhoods, we had a sort of local boogeyman in ours. He was an older guy who lived in a messy house, set in a messy yard. He was rarely even seen by anyone in the neighborhood. In the summer, his lawn would grow really, really tall. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen it mowed once. It was pretty much a common thing for young boys in the neighborhood to give this man a hard time. About a month into summer vacation, my friends and I got pretty bored. We'd been out playing in the heat all day, and the sun had gone down. Trying to think of something to do, one of my buddies thought, we ought to go torment that old man. It was stupid and immature, I know, but we were stupid and immature, so we went ahead and did it. We decided to break into his backyard. He had a really high wooden fence, and it was impossible for us to see over it. We knew there were some trees back there because we could see them, but we weren't really sure what else there was. He had a lot of junk in his front yard, so we thought we could find something in the back we might want to steal. My friend Josh went into his garage and stole his dad's bolt cutters. We used those to get into the place. I felt my first tinge of guilt from the fact that we were destroying the lock the guy had on his gate. But a little bit of guilt was not enough to stop us from doing anything wrong. Josh also had his dad's flashlight. I have to admit to feeling a bit of a rush of fear when we began trying to break the lock. I'd never used bolt cutters before, and the lock was big, so Josh was unable to get the lock to break on his own. He needed one of us to help him by grabbing the handles, and we all tried our best to break the lock. It took a while, but we finally were able to exert enough force to cause the lock to snap in two. It also made a large snapping sound, which took me completely by surprise. We hid down, waiting to see if the old man had heard the noise. If he did, he didn't come to the window or the backyard. We thought we were in the clear, so we opened the door and looked in. Yeah, the backyard was even worse than the front yard. I mean, this man had serious clutter. There were wildly grown bushes and grass, lots of old rusted equipment laying around, and there was even a go-kart. The go-kart seemed to get my friend Chuck's attention. He told us that it had belonged to a kid in the neighborhood who had disappeared. The story was, according to him, that the old man was sick of the sound of the go-kart, so he waited until no one was around and abducted the kid and took his go-kart. He then fed the kid through the wood chipper in his backyard. I knew that Chuck was just making this up as he went along, as I, nor any of my other friends, had never heard this story before. Basically, he just saw the go-kart and wood chipper, and he decided to make up a story about them. I think a few of the guys pretended that they thought he was telling the truth, but we were just having fun. I told him that he was full of crap, and that's when he dared me to sit in the go-kart. I mean, I guess it was scary to a bunch of kids to sit in the go-kart of a dead kid. I don't know, but I definitely was not scared, and I went and sat down on it until the backyard light came on, and the old man came running out of the house screaming at us. I couldn't really make out anything that he was saying to us and really didn't care. We just all started running for the gate to leave the yard. I was sitting, so I was the last one to try and get out of there. Unfortunately, I wasn't fast enough and the old man caught me. At first, I just assumed he would call my parents or the police, but he didn't. He was calling me all sorts of names, and then he began dragging me over to his wood chipper. I began screaming for my friends to come back. While I was struggling, he turned the wood chipper on. At this point, I had never been so scared in my entire life. I kept yelling and screaming for my friends. The old man was talking to me, but I honestly couldn't hear a word he was saying. I was beyond terrified. I couldn't imagine anything worse than this man putting me through his wood chipper. He actually began moving my hands towards it, while I was blubbering and begging him not. Fortunately for me, my friends had some notion of what was going on. All of them came back. They began hitting the old man, trying their best to make him let go of me. It was surreal how strong he was, but eventually they overcame him, and he lost his grip. My friends grabbed me, and we ran off into the night. We were too scared to tell our parents or call the police. We were trespassing on the man's property after all. He didn't call the police either, as far as we knew. No one ever addressed the incident with us. But also, we had a newfound respect and fear for the man who lived in that house and never bothered him again. Number 3. College. I absolutely don't understand why some people like summer so much. Honestly, all it does is make me really miserable. I hate being drenched in sweat, and I tend to have that happen to me more often than not. During summertime about 10 years ago, I was trying to get some rest. Perhaps I should give you a little bit of background to help you understand the situation. I had just finished my freshman year of college. I was not taking any summer classes, but I also didn't feel like I wanted to move out of my single dorm room, only to have to move back in once school started. So I decided to stay in my room. It would be a choice I would live to regret, as the dormitories didn't have AC in them. So for the entire summer, I had nothing but a fan to keep me cool. It wasn't very helpful. I was tossing and turning one night. I kept looking at the clock as it got later and later, and wishing I could at least doze off a little bit. After a few hours had passed and nothing was working, I decided I needed to get out of bed. There was a convenience store off the far side of campus that was open all night. I decided to walk down there to get a slush, so maybe the walk and the coolness of the drink would help me relax a bit. On the way there, I had no issue. I bought my slush, and it was absolutely wonderful taking the first taste of it. I mean, I was in heaven. I was more than sure that it would be more than enough to cool me down, so I could finally go to sleep. I left the store and began heading back to my dorm room. I was walking next to one of the buildings on campus when I noticed out of the corner of my eye, some movement coming from the back of the building. I was curious, so I decided to go and take a closer look. It was in the shadows, so I couldn't make it out without getting very close to it. When I did that, I wished that I hadn't. A very strange man was leaning up against the hall. In his hand he had a knife, and he was using the knife to cut himself. He was definitely wincing as he cut, but that didn't stop him. He kept cutting himself with that darn knife. I'm not sure how long I stood there in shock, watching him, but it was long enough for him to notice me. When he did, he quit cutting himself. He then got up, stumbling in the process. "Hey you, get the fuck over here," he said to me. He then began walking in my direction. Well, him walking definitely cured me of my immobility. I turned off and ran for my life. I didn't know if he meant me any harm, but I wasn't willing to take the chance. I didn't quit running until I got back to my dormitory and closed the security door. I then looked behind me and the man did not follow me. It didn't matter that he didn't follow me though. I was already vastly disturbed by what had happened, and it has stuck with me to this very day. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. I thought with this hot summer going on, we could use a nice set of winter stories to cool off with, and I hope it did the job. If you want to read print versions of these stories, you can do that at the Killer Orange Cat subreddit in the link provided in the description. In the meantime, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider subscribing by using the button below, or using the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave me a comment to let me know what you think of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter using the links in the description. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please feel free to submit it to the address provided in the description. My main requirement is that the story is original, meaning it has not yet been read on any YouTube channel. And please, whatever you do, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.